Every day, we have the decision to decide who we want to be. What kind of father do you want to be? Do you want to be the father who fills his kids with joy and inspiration? Or do you want to be the father who, when they think about you, they're scared because dad will be judging me, dad will be yelling at me, dad will be screaming at me. Because of that, I will listen to him, I will obey him now, and as soon as I have the option, I'm going to get the hell out of this house. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rising Father Podcast. I'm Chris Rodack. Just ended our Men of Fire Brotherhood call on this topic, so I'm going to put it out to you guys as the podcast today. So it all started far back in time. No, it all started with a post I made a couple days ago about letting your children be happy, joyful, chaotic at times, crazy at times, loud at times, messy at times, and how that is a good thing. It is a good thing. If you have loud, sometimes messy, crazy, chaotic kids, it means you're doing something right. And there's a lot of lines to be drawn in here. There's a lot of gray area. This is not black and white. I'm not saying a square has four sides. This is something that has nuance, but you're all very intelligent people. I have the smartest audience in the world because you're following Rising Father, because you want to be the best person you can be. So you can approach this topic with nuance and understand there's gray areas and everyone has different situations. What I am not saying is that if you have a child who takes a baseball bat to your TV and windows and screams swear words at you, that is a good thing. What I'm saying is that if you're out at a Texas Roadhouse, a family restaurant, and it's loud and noisy and the waiters are dancing and singing and your kid starts dancing and singing, that you allow them to be themselves and have fun. You don't get uncomfortable, tell them to be quiet because you have an emotion. What I'm saying is that in your home, if your kids want to have a dance party and they're being loud and singing, dancing, laughing, even screaming at times and having a great time, you allow them to do so. You do not tell them to be quiet and go on their iPad because you had a stressful day at work. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying allow your children to be themselves, be happy, be joyful, and do not crush the person they are because we have a lack of emotion and lack of control. I'm going to say that again because I screwed that up. Allow your children to be themselves, be happy and joyful. Do not crush the person they are by our lack of self-control and our lack of emotional control. That's what I was trying to say. So I made this post. It's going viral right now. I didn't think it would. I didn't think it would go viral. I thought that it would be a good post to agree with some people, disagree. I knew people would disagree with it. And people always view posts through their own life lens. I'm in the content space. I'm in the social media space. I've been building social media brands for 7 years now. It's crazy. Learned a lot of lessons along the way. One of the things I learned was people view messages through the lens of their own life. For example, if I made a post on Instagram today that said, "I know what you did." If you did something amazing today, you would read that post and say, "Hell yes. Thank you, Chris. I am a badass." If you did something great. If you did something horrible that you're ashamed of, you would get defensive, you'd get emotional and say, "Nuh-uh, you don't know." Or you'd say, "Oh my God, he knows. He knows what I did." Because you are reading a message through the lens of your own life. A lot of times, I will post a message, and if you are doing that thing, like say I post a positive message about one aspect of parenting. I say, exercising with your kids is good. And you do exercise with your kids. You will read that message and say, yes, I totally agree. Exercising with your kids is good. You could also be in a group of people who do not exercise with your kids, read that message, say nothing, and say, maybe I should start exercising with my kids. There's a third group of people who are the complete opposite, never exercise with their kids, would never exercise with their kids, and get offended and think they are being judged and see themselves in a mirror, and instead of changing, double down, dig their heels in, and defend their position and say, actually, exercising with your kids is blah. Why don't you just let your kids be themselves and grow up, and we'll go on. People's truth is revealed in their emotion. The more emotional reaction you have is the more true the thing is to you. So there's three groups of perspectives that people view social media posts with, such as the one I posted. It was a positive post. It said, having loud, messy, and crazy kids is a good thing. That means they feel safe with you. You have created an environment where they can be themselves, they can let loose, they can express themselves freely. They are happy in your company and will express it like kids do. That means with no control and pure joy. And guess what? Kids get loud, messy, and crazy when they're happy. Don't stifle it with judgment and make them fearful of being themselves in your presence. Don't make them build a cage around the person they are. Be happy that you have happy kids, and remember, in a few years, you will have no noise, no mess, but wish you still had it. That was the post. So a positive post. I'm saying, really, if you have loud, messy, crazy kids, good. That's great. Should be a positive post for everyone. However, a vast majority of the people like it. It has, 9,000 likes and 1.8 thousand shares, 8,000 or 1.8 thousand saves, 8,000 shares, 300,000 views, and it keeps on going up. So, vast majority of people agree with it, like it, at least the people that are in my audience. But there's also very different types of comments and reactions to it. Some people say, yes, I agree, that's awesome. Other people say, 50-50. And there's some people saying, this is horrible, terrible advice. You're an awful father. So if you read a post that says having happy, joyful, chaotic kids is good, and your response is, you are a terrible father, where does that connection come? Let's diagnose it. Because the reason I have Rising Father, the reason I have my Men of Fire coaching program is to help men be better fathers, husbands, and people, just as I needed. I'm not perfect, but I have a system in place called identity hacking, which helps fathers make transformational moves in their life. And I know it now. It's not just a philosophy. It's actually happening. So I help fathers do that. So how do you go from reading a post that says having happy, messy, joyful, chaotic kids is good to saying you're a horrible father? That means that when you see the word chaotic, you think of the chaos, the negative chaos happening in your home. So if you live in a house where kids are screaming, swearing, it's toxic and negative and breaking things, that is what you associate with chaos. When I think of chaos, I think of the mornings before my kids go to school. I'm trying to get some work done. My daughter comes running downstairs, jumps on my lap and kisses me. My son comes down, tries to give me a headlock, and we're wrestling and having craziness. We are laughing, loving, and it's chaotic. Happy chaos. That's what I think. Because that's what I'm viewing from my life story. That is what I view those words from, is the lens of my life. So chaos in a house to me means happy chaos. If you are in an unhappy home, a toxic home, a cold, tension-filled home where there's a lot of disrespect and no one listens to each other and people attack each other, chaos is a bad thing for you. Messiness. I am okay with a certain level of messiness at times. It is also my job to teach my kids to put their things away, to be messy. To put their things away, to be orderly, and to be neat and disciplined. That is also my job. Guess what? Kids aren't always like that. I wasn't always like that. In order for your kids to grow, they have to be messy at times. Whenever your child is learning to eat for the first time, if you do not allow them to be messy, they will never learn to eat. When your daughter is 2 years old and learning to use a spoon and is putting her soup in her mouth for the first time, she will get it all over the place. If you scream and yell at her because she's making a mess, she will be terrified to use that spoon, and her development will be delayed because you cannot handle any mess. If you can joyfully, warmly, and patiently let your daughter make a mess while she's using the spoon, she will look forward to using the spoon, and the end result will be your daughter is more neat, quicker, and learns to use the spoon quicker because you had control over yourself. The only way that happens is if you allow some mess to happen. I'm going to give you lots of examples. I was building a pull-up bar, a base blocked pull-up bar in my back patio. My daughter has never used a hex wrench before, and I soon found that out when she asked if she could help me, and I said yes. I knew that it would take 4 times as long to build this thing, but it was necessary for her to learn how to use a basic tool. So she came outside, and all of these little bolts are the hex bolts. So I had many stripped bolts. I had to go to the store and get more. So it took time, took extra money. It could have been frustrating. It was inconvenient. But at the end of this time, my daughter knew how to use a hex wrench. She understood the force it takes to screw something in, which is a lot more complicated than you might think. You need to brace your feet. You need to have your hand positioned correctly. You need to understand leverage with your body. You have to brace with your left hand if you're going to screw it in with your right hand. All of these things are necessary to use a simple screwdriver or a wrench. And I soon found out, hey, Lauren hasn't had a lot of experience with this. So I need to take the time for her to learn this. That is my job. I would consider that a failure on my part if my kids left my house and didn't know how to use screwdrivers, knives safely, and basic tools and DIY things that I learned from my father. If I don't teach that to my kids, that's a failure on my part. The only way that happens is if I am willing to let those things take more time, to waste money, to waste time, to waste resources. I have to sacrifice my time and gift my time to them if I want them to grow. If I am unwilling to do that because things get messy, things get loud, things get chaotic, because life isn't as I see it, then my kids will not grow because I had to live life in an orderly fashion. That is the message. It is, if you want your kids to grow into successful, happy, resilient people, you have to allow them to fail their way there. People have a problem with that if you find yourself in opposition to that message. If you are somebody who never takes risks, never invests in himself, needs everything to be perfect, are a perfectionist, avoid failure, only do the comfortable, easy thing, you're probably a micromanaging, over-controlling person because you do not trust yourself in any situation that does not have a predetermined perfect result. You will only step onto the train if everything is perfect for you. You will only step forward on a journey if every single stop is laid out, if you know exactly where you're going, if every single step of the process is perfectly laid out to you. You will never just go on a walk and see what happens. Go on a journey and trust yourself. People are unwilling to do that when they do not trust themselves. It's like me in hot yoga. I could have stopped myself because I knew I was going to fail many times along the way. But I just trust myself. I know that I'll figure it out, and 1 or 2 years from now I'll be really good at it. But if I said, I don't want to look stupid, I don't want to fail, I don't want to make mistakes, this is going to get messy, this is going to be crazy, so I'm not going to try it, then I do not grow. The only way I grow is if I fail and make mistakes along the way. Same thing for our kids. The only way they grow is if they fail and make mistakes and are allowed to be crazy along the way. That is the only way. To let your kids be crazy, to make mistakes, be loud, messy, chaotic, to allow that to happen, the person who's allowing it to happen has to have a level of discipline and self-control. You have to not overreact when things don't go perfectly. If you need things to be perfect, is that a sign of strength or weakness? If you need complete control and order for you to exist, is that a sign of strength and weakness? Strength or weakness? I think it's a sign of weakness. If I can let my kids be loud, have fun, be joyful, be themselves, and then speak to them, say, okay, it's time to wrap this up. Let's move on to the next thing. It's time for bed. And they listen to me and do that. That is a level of control. The other option is I don't let them be loud because you have to use your inside voice. I don't let them be messy because I need my house to be neat. I don't let them have fun and experiment with things because that's not the way it should be. It's not the way I like. That's also a level of control. It's also a way I could be. I could be a person who needs other people to be controlled for me to be happy, or I could be a person who can exist and be happy while other people are not under my control. Which one requires more strength? Which one is a sign of weakness? If you're going on a trip in your car to go cut down a Christmas tree, as we just did, and your kids are so excited because this is a day they look forward to all year. You have Christmas music playing. The kids are singing. They're joyful. They start to pick on each other. They fight a little bit, but then they're having fun. They're excited. And things get louder than is comfortable to you. You have a couple of options. You can allow them to do it, and you and your wife can look at each other and say, well, it's once a year. Let them have fun. They're having fun. We can just take it for these 30 minutes while we drive to the Christmas tree farm. Or you can shut the music off. Say, kids, you're being too loud. Be quiet while we get there. Don't talk, because I don't like the noise. Could also do that. Which person is demonstrating strength and which person is demonstrating weakness? The person who cannot handle it or the person who can handle it? Let's say you yell at your kids. When I made that post, a guy commented, this is typical weak parenting. This is typical, I think he said this is typical, something like this is typical weak parenting. And, I just clicked on his profile. Every picture is him holding a machine gun dressed in camo, which I don't have a problem with. I think that stuff's awesome. I would love to be living out in a farm somewhere, shooting things with machine guns and camo, but that's just what it was. So I said, is it a sign of strength or weakness to yell at your kids? If you have to yell at your kids, is that a sign of strength or a sign of weakness? If you can exist in a world where your kids are loud, crazy, chaotic, and you can still smile and be warm to them, and you can allow them to grow and be themselves, is that strength or weakness? If your kids must be silent around you, they must obey at all times, they must, like the Von Trapps, click their heels in the morning when in lineup, are you strong or are you weak because you can only exist if the world is orderly? That's how I didn't say anything to him. I just asked him questions. And that is the truth. If you need to yell at your kids for them to obey you, are you a strong father or are you a weak father? Pretty simply, if you need to yell at your kids for them to listen to you, then you need to yell at your kids for them to listen to you. That means they will not listen to you unless you yell at them. That means your words have lost their power. That means your words have lost their strength. And you can listen to what I'm saying and be in one of those three groups of people. You can either agree with me because you don't have to scream and yell at your kids. You could be in the second group who does scream and yell at their kids and say, maybe I don't have to scream and yell at my kids. Maybe I could change. Or you can be in the third group of people who gets offended and says, he's just weak. He's not strong like me. He's a weak father who I don't know, whatever you think. This is typical weak parenting. Quite simply, if you have to yell at your kids for them to listen to you, you cannot control your kids without you yelling at them. Which means your words are weak, which means you have turned into a weak person in their eyes. So you have to keep on doing artificial things to make you look stronger so they obey you. You have to scare them into submission. Or your words could have power just by a look. Speak softly, carry a big stick. Does that ring a bell? A father can speak softly, and his words can have power because of the person that he is. If the only way my kids listen to me is by me screaming and yelling at them, then I have no strength. I have no respect from them. They don't respect me. I should just have to speak to them in a calm voice and they listen. Now listen, everybody. I'm not saying that's the way it is for me. I'm not saying I never yell at my kids. I am not saying I never raise my voice. I'm describing an ideal to strive for. And the ideals we strive for trickle down into the habits we do every day, in the thoughts we use to back up those habits. Our perspective shapes the habits and systems we create in life, which shape our identity. So if you believe what I'm saying, that will trickle down into the habits that you have every day. If you listen to this, get offended, and say, no, that's the opposite of the truth, that will also trickle down. And you will yell at your kids and scream at them, and you will double down on that. You can also yell and scream at your kids if that is just normal communication to you. If your parents did that to you, their parents did that to them, and that's the way everyone in your house communicates, then you are just the family who yells and screams at each other. I know some families like that. Everyone yells at each other. That's the way they talk. They yell and scream at each other, and that's their normal communication. You go over, you visit their house, and you think, what the hell is happening here? That's just their normal. What I am not saying is that we allow our children to do whatever they want, to be crazy in a negative way, and to be disobedient a-holes. I'm not saying that. If your son's about to punch your daughter in the face, yes, that's a time to yell. But I gave examples at the beginning of when the line is crossed, when it's time to decide whether you are being out of control emotionally or someone needs guided forcefully. And here's another strategy. The less you yell, the more powerful it is when you do. You need to save that for when it counts. If you yell all the time, it is the boy who cried wolf, and they say, Dad's just yelling again. On a previous podcast, I gave examples of a mom I know who constantly gives her kids empty threats. Every day, just threaten, the most exaggerated, crazy threats you can imagine, over and over and over again. So our kids just aren't afraid anymore. They'll do whatever they want because the mother has gone to the extreme every single time. It's always the end of the world if you don't obey this littlest command I give you. And the kids say, well, the worst possible thing didn't happen. You already threatened me with the worst possible consequence, and that didn't happen. So why would I obey you if I'm threatened with something less? Because you already threatened to throw me out of the house if I didn't get you a glass of water, and that didn't happen. So why would I do my chores if you're threatening me with taking my candy away? I'm giving you a philosophy of parenting, of who I want to be. And this is a lot of the philosophy of the Men of Fire program and of Rising Father. And that is, we want to be disciplined, ripped, and lead our families with joy. This is the most important part. Lead our families with joy. That means we are the lighthouse. That means we can lead our families not with force, not with fear. I didn't say lead your family with fear. I could have said Men of Fire program, get disciplined, ripped, and lead your family with fear. I didn't say that. I said get disciplined, ripped, and lead your family with joy. There's a reason it says with joy. Does it take more strength? Is it more impressive to lead your family with fear or lead your family with joy? Which one's more impressive? Which one is stronger? Is the man who inflicts fear into his family stronger than the man who inflicts them with joy? The man who guides his children's behavior with fear, is he stronger than the man who can guide his family with joy? That's a good question. If my kids listen to me only when I scare them, does that mean I have more or less control if they listen to me when I inspire them? Which one? Which do I want to be? Who do I want to be? Every day we have the decision to decide who we want to be. What kind of father do you want to be? Do you want to be the father who fills his kids with joy and inspiration? Or do you want to be the father who, when they think about you, they're scared? Because dad will be judging me. Dad will be yelling at me. Dad will be screaming at me. Because of that, I will listen to him. I will obey him now. And as soon as I have the option, I'm going to get the hell out of this house. You can be that dad. That guy who commented, he's that. Maybe he's that dad. I also want to help guys like that. If you are that dad, I don't want you to be that dad. I want you to come over to the side of leading your family with joy. I don't think you can become all you can be if you are guided by fear. It's for our kids and it's for us. If you live your life in a fear-based way, you cannot become all you can be. This past month in November, we've had more people than ever join our Men of Fire program. Guys who have taken the leap, guys who have invested in themselves, maybe for the first time ever, but said, I want to be a part of this. I want to become my best. I want to be part of a group who's pushing themselves to be elite, be the best husbands, fathers, and men they can be. Right? And I just talked to a guy yesterday. One guy joined, one guy didn't. The guy who didn't had fear in him. He put on his application, he said, I'm a procrastinator. I break promises to myself. I've been stuck for a decade. I always think about doing something, and I always find a reason not to. I'm always waiting for the perfect time, and I've just been stuck here. As I talked to him, it was clear that he was living his life based on fear. Fear was guiding his daily decisions. When we got to the end, fear once again decided his decisions. He did the thing that he applied to stop doing. Procrastinated. Once again procrastinated. Once again let fear take him out. Scared to try something new. Well, what if it doesn't work out? Well, what if nothing changes after 12 months? What if I do this? What if I invest in myself and nothing happens and it was all a waste? And it was watching somebody self-sabotage themselves in real time. The thing is, you have to be aware of time. You will run out of time. People that start investing in their 20s will end up with a lot more money than people who start investing in their 50s. They are using time to their advantage. The earlier you make a change, the more time you have to compound the positive effects of that change. If you keep on waiting, you don't get that change. If your children are 3 years old and you make the life change you need, that means they have 15 years living with you of you at your best self. If you procrastinate, now they're 10, that means you have 8 years. If you wait until they're 16, that means they have 2 years. I always say you can do it at any point, and you can, but you also lose time. Time is what you have right now. Time is the thing you have. That's everything. It's you are living your life right now. What is worth putting off making the changes? Are you going to let fear keep you stuck? Are you going to let fear and doubt keep you in a life you don't want forever? And I do not want my kids to live like that. I do not want my kids to live in fear, so I do not guide their behavior with fear. If that was my method of guiding them, then that would be the way they live their life. They'd be living their life in a fear-based way. And that keeps you from growing, just as it kept this guy from growing. He decided not to take action because he was afraid of the unknown. And because of that, he's going to remain stuck until he overcomes his fear. He can get unstuck if he overcomes his fear, but until then, fear will rule him. And people that do that make weak decisions and don't grow. If fear guides your life, you do not grow. If you are free to make mistakes, if you are free to fail, you can grow. You have to be willing to step into the black, step into the fog, make mistakes, fail, and trust yourself along the way. So let's bring this all around back to our original message and point of this, and that is allowing our kids to be themselves, to get messy, to make mistakes, like Miss Frizzle says, and having the self-control to allow them to do that, because our kids cannot grow and have self-control and become all they can be if we do not have self-control. We can only accept other people to make mistakes and fail if we have that same acceptance within ourselves. To do that, we must grow. We must become all we can be. We must be disciplined. We must have emotional control. We must replace our habits, shift our perspective, implement systems into our life. We must be that person. Only then can we allow other people to be themselves and be okay with it. We snap, we get frustrated whenever we are frustrated with ourselves and we have a lack of trusting within ourselves. That's when it happens. It's, I need things to be perfect because I don't trust myself. I will only take a step forward if I know exactly what's going to happen in the future. How do I know what's going to happen in the future? Because I just told my kids exactly what they're going to do. I will only step forward into the future after I've controlled the situation. How do I control the situation? I yell and scream them into submission, into doing exactly what I tell them to do. Then I can exist. The person who does that has a lack of discipline, has a lack of self-control, and they haven't mastered themselves. The person that has mastered themselves, the stoic leader, the person who's disciplined, they don't need every single second of the future to be controlled. They can exist. They can survive. They can walk into battle and be confident. They can still smile when the kids are acting crazy. A measure of a father's strength is not how loudly he needs to yell to guide his children's behavior. It's how little he needs to yell to guide their behavior. We can read every parenting book in the world, but if we have not become the person that has our children's respect, has their inspiration, none of it will matter. No piece of advice, nothing will matter if they do not want to be you. Your words will ring hollow. When that happens, that's when you have the need to shout and scream for them to listen. You must become the person that they listen to because they want to be like you, because they respect you, because your words have power. You don't need to scream and yell. You can whisper, and your words will still have power. Nothing will change until you change.